When I got pregnant at 17, my parents threw me out. Now my son's a leading surgeon. They showed up saying they did everything right. What happened next shocked everyone. Can you imagine hearing a name you haven't answered to in nearly 3 decades? A name from a past you buried so deep you thought it was gone forever? One moment, I was just walking through a hospital lobby, and the next, my entire carefully constructed life felt like it was fracturing into a million pieces. It was a Tuesday morning, busy and bright, and I was standing in the polished lobby of Cascadia Medical Center. Phones were ringing, conversations murmured, the squeak of orthopedic shoes against buffed tile, just the normal hum of a hospital. Then it happened. A voice, sharp and unwelcome, cut through all that noise like a knife. Caitlyn. My chest constricted, a feeling like invisible wire cinching me tight. My hands started to tremble, and the visitor badge clipped to my blazer suddenly felt like a concrete block, dragging me down. Caitlyn Gray. The voice called again, louder, demanding recognition. Heads turned. Curious glances swept in my direction as a tall man with silver-streaked hair strode across the lobby, a petite blonde woman trailing behind him. Their faces, they were older versions of the ones that had haunted the edges of my nightmares for decades. Right across the lobby, I heard another voice, a familiar one, Arabella over here. My son, Everest, waved from near the reception desk, still in his blue surgical scrubs, completely unaware of the earthquake fracturing my carefully constructed world. 2 names. 1 person. I am Arabella Beaumont now. I've been her for 28 years. But that single sound, Caitlyn, pulled me backward, violently, through time. Suddenly, I wasn't 46 anymore. I was 17 again, standing in our apartment doorway, a positive pregnancy test clutched in my trembling hand. I saw my father's face contort with rage. "You have until morning to pack," he'd said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, like pavement. "Take what you can carry." My mother had stood behind him, silent tears streaming down her face, offering no defense, no comfort. The next morning, they drove me to the bus station with exactly $219 in cash, every dollar I'd saved from my summer job at the mall. "Martin, perhaps we should approach more gently," the blonde woman, my mother, murmured now. Her hand clutched my father's arm, but her eyes were calculating, scanning the lobby for reactions. They'd rehearsed this, you see. Planned this ambush. "Caitlyn, it's been too long." My father extended his hand, as if we'd simply parted after a pleasant family dinner, rather than him casting his pregnant teenage daughter out to fend for herself. "You look wonderful." I fought against the violent undertow of memory, that first night, sleeping on a park bench, too terrified to close my eyes. The cardboard sign I'd made, "Pregnant. Please help." The rain that soaked through my only jacket. Then Agatha Beaumont finding me there. This elegant woman in her 60s, offering not just a meal, but a home. Her 6-bedroom craftsman with a nursery already prepared for what would become her unofficial grand family project. Everyone deserves a second chance, she'd told me, over steaming mugs of tea that first morning. The memories twisted inside me like snakes. My fingers found Agatha's antique watch on my wrist. Its steady ticking was the only thing anchoring me to the present. 29 years of silence. Why no? I knew the answer before I could fully form the question. 3 weeks ago, the Seattle Times ran a feature on Everest, the brilliant young cardiothoracic surgery resident who had performed a miraculous procedure on a newborn. The article mentioned the Agatha Beaumont Foundation. It connected my son to the boutique hotel and bakery empire that had made me a wealthy woman after Agatha's passing. And now, suddenly, here they were. My father stepped forward, as if to embrace me. I stepped back, chin raised, finding my voice, though it felt thin and reedy. "My name is Arabella." My mother laughed. A brittle sound, like glass cracking. "Don't be ridiculous. You'll always be our Caitlyn." 2 nurses at the reception desk exchanged glances. One whispered something to the other. I realized we had an audience now. My father noted it too, his smile broadening for their benefit. "We've waited so long for this moment," he said, loud enough to carry across the lobby. "When we saw the article about our grandson's surgical achievement, we knew it was time to reconnect with our family." The strategic word choice didn't escape me. Our grandson. Our family. Establishing ownership. Connection. Bloodlines. The familiar gray family tactic. Appear reasonable while taking what doesn't belong to you. My head felt light, a weird sensation. The hotel magnate's daughter and the disgraced pregnant teenager were superimposed in the same body, neither quite real. Everest waved again from across the lobby, clearly wondering why I hadn't joined him. He looked so much like me. Agatha used to say he had my determination in his eyes. We know we made mistakes, my mother said, her voice softening, a practiced concern. I noticed her designer handbag. The diamond earrings that caught the fluorescent light. Martin wore an expensive watch, not the same bargain store brand he'd worn when he drove me to the bus station with instructions never to return. Whatever they wanted from this reunion, it was calculated, rehearsed, strategic. The past? I finally managed, the word coming out sharper than intended. The past was watching you drive away while I stood at a bus station with nowhere to go. Martin's smile tightened. We were young parents facing a difficult situation. You were 41, I corrected him. Mom was 38. A woman in scrubs at the reception desk looked up, clearly uncomfortable witnessing this confrontation. My mother noticed and adjusted her approach, lowering her voice, leaning in closer. Darling, we've changed. We've regretted what happened every day since. 29 years of silence suggests otherwise. My fingers twisted Agatha's watch, one full rotation, then another. A trick she taught me for managing moments of crisis. I'm the CEO of Blue Finch Bakery. I sit on 3 charitable boards. I raised a son who saves lives with his hands. I am not that terrified teenager anymore. Across the lobby, Everest noticed something was wrong. He excused himself from the conversation with a colleague and started walking toward us, his stride purposeful, protective. The son I raised alone. The boy Agatha helped me nurture into the man he's become. Is everything okay here? Everest asked, positioning himself beside me, a physical barrier between me and the strangers claiming to be my parents. In his eyes, I saw a choice. Create a scene in this hospital where he works, where his reputation matters, or retreat strategically and handle this on my terms, not theirs. Agatha would choose the latter. Never fight a battle without choosing the battlefield, she would say. Martin's smile shifted as he took in Everest, 6 feet tall, confident, successful. My father extended his hand. You must be our grandson. We've waited so long to meet you. Everest didn't take the offered hand. Instead, he placed his arm around my shoulders. I'm Dr. Beaumont, he said, emphasizing our shared surname. My mother is Arabella Beaumont. I felt something strengthen inside me at my son's touch, the foundation Agatha built for us brick by brick. The legal name change at 18. The adult adoption at 20. The life constructed far from the wreckage they created. We should go, I said to Everest, my voice steadier than I felt. We have dinner reservations. Caitlyn, my father called as we turned away. We're staying at the Olympic. We'd like to meet properly as a family. I paused, turned back one final time. You gave up the right to call me anything 29 years ago. 3 days passed, and Nolan Pierce's office, smelling like sandalwood and leather, was a scent of stability in a world suddenly spinning off its axis. Their voices still echoed in my mind like a broken record. Caitlyn. Caitlyn Gray. The name felt foreign now, a borrowed identity I'd returned decades ago. I found these in Agatha's safety deposit box, Nolan said, sliding a manila folder across his desk. His silver hair caught the afternoon light streaming through Venetian blinds. She kept meticulous records. The folder contained yellowed court documents from 1996. My hands trembled as I scanned the pages, each line revealing a truth I never fully understood. Temporary guardianship granted to Agatha Beaumont. A no-contact order against Martin and Jocelyn Gray. The careful legal architecture of my salvation, constructed while I was still learning to change diapers with one hand and hold Everest with the other. There's more, Nolan continued, pushing another stack toward me. Your legal name change in 1998. The adult adoption papers from 2000. Agatha made certain everything was ironclad. I ran my fingers over Agatha's familiar signature, the elegant swoop of her initials. All these years, I thought she was simply being kind, a wealthy woman with a soft heart for a pregnant teenager. Now I saw the steel beneath her velvet exterior. She hadn't just rescued me, she had fortified me against a threat she anticipated would someday return. Why would they want contact now after 29 years? I asked, though the answer materialized before Nolan could respond. He tapped the business section of the Seattle Times, spread open on his desk. The headline read, "Gray and Fox Holdings under SEC investigation." Below, a smaller article featured Everest's miracle surgery, mentioning his connection to the Agatha Beaumont Foundation and Blue Finch Bakery empire. "The timing isn't coincidental," Nolan said. "Your parents' company is in serious trouble, while your son has just been publicly identified as heir to a clean, profitable business portfolio." My stomach twisted as reality reshaped itself around me. They waited until Agatha died to make their move. Nolan nodded, then slid a final document across his desk. This one was new, the ink still fresh, the paper crisp. A contract between Martin Gray and Tyler Quinn, Everest's biological father. I hadn't heard that name since he declared my pregnancy, not his problem, outside the mall food court where we both worked. The contract specified an 8% success fee for a family reunion campaign. The room tilted slightly. "They're working with Tyler?" "Your ex-boyfriend filed for bankruptcy last month," Nolan explained. "Apparently, he's decided that Everest, the son he never acknowledged, might be his ticket to solvency." I closed my eyes, touching Agatha's watch on my wrist. All those years of insisting I complete legal paperwork, pushing me to document everything, teaching me to create contingency plans for the bakery. It wasn't paranoia or business acumen alone. It was protection. "They're not seeking reconciliation," I said quietly. "They want access to what Agatha built." "I'm afraid it's worse than that," Nolan replied, handing me a financial journal. "Gray and Fox Holdings isn't just under investigation. They're facing potential criminal charges. Your father needs more than money. He needs a reputation whitewash. A heartwarming family reunion story and association with a respected surgeon would be quite valuable right now." The memory of my father's practiced smile in the hospital lobby took on new significance, not just calculated, but desperate. My mother's tears, precisely timed for maximum effect. They were drowning, and I was their life raft. "Do they think I'll just welcome them back because they called me by my old name?" My voice sounded stronger than I felt. "They're desperate, not delusional," Nolan said. "They've hired a crisis management team. They're cultivating a narrative about family reconciliation that will play well in the business community. Family sticks together in troubled times. We can help each other," he quoted the phrase with distaste. "And Tyler? What's his angle beyond money?" "Bankruptcy fraud investigation. The timing suggests he's seeking protection through new family connections. Your parents found a desperate ally." The scope of the betrayal expanded beyond what I'd imagined. Not just my parents' sudden reappearance, but a coordinated campaign to undermine everything Agatha helped me build. "Their willingness to use media pressure shows they'll stop at nothing," Nolan added, showing me a press inquiry about a touching family reconciliation that landed at the foundation office this morning. I stood and walked to the window, watching Seattle's skyline blur through unexpected tears. All these years, I thought Agatha saved me because she was kind. I never realized she was fighting a war. "She was both," Nolan said, his voice gentle. "Kind and strategic. She loved you, Arabella. And she knew exactly who she was protecting you from." The door opened, and Everest entered, his surgical scrubs replaced with a crisp button-down shirt, dark circles under his eyes testifying to a long hospital shift. He studied the documents spread across the desk, his expression hardening as he absorbed their meaning. "She knew they might return," Nolan said, moving to a floor-to-ceiling bookcase. He pulled out a thick binder labeled "Gray Contingencies" in Agatha's neat handwriting. "She prepared for this exact situation." "The timing matches my feature in the Times," Everest said, scanning the articles. "They've been monitoring my career." The revelation struck me like physical pain. While I watched my son graduate medical school with pride, they were calculating his future value to their reputation. "My grandmother protected you then," Everest said, placing his hand on my shoulder. "We'll protect your legacy now." Nolan opened the binder, revealing meticulously organized sections, legal precedents, financial records, media statements, witness affidavits. 29 years of documentation, waiting for this moment. "We're not fighting unprepared," Nolan said, his attorney's confidence evident. Agatha made certain of that. I looked between Everest and Nolan, feeling something shift inside me. The terrified teenager who stepped off a bus with nothing was gone. In her place stood the woman Agatha believed I could become, the one who wouldn't be erased again. "Then, let's use her plan," I said, opening the binder. "Show me everything." The next day, I stared at the manila folder Nolan had spread across his walnut desk. The papers inside had the faded quality of documents stored for decades, yet they felt like live ammunition in my hands. Each yellowed page represented another piece of protection Agatha quietly built around us, around me, while I was busy learning to be a mother. "She documented everything," Nolan said, his silver-rimmed glasses catching the afternoon light as he slid another paper toward me. "Agatha hired a private investigator every time the Greys attempted contact." My fingers trembled slightly as I lifted a report dated 1998, a year after Everest was born. The investigator's neat handwriting detailed Martin and Jocelyn Gray watching us from their car outside Bluefinch's first location. They never approached, just observed. Like predators studying potential prey. "There are 11 documented violations of the no-contact order," Nolan continued, his voice carrying the quiet satisfaction of a man who has found the perfect chess move. "Each one carefully recorded, photographed, and notarized. Real ironclad stuff." I scanned the papers, my heart pounding against my ribs. "She never told me they tried to contact us. She wanted to protect you from exactly what's happening now." Nolan tapped a legal document bearing an embossed seal. "This adult adoption is ironclad. They cannot claim any legal relationship to you, which means they have no standing regarding Everest either." The revelation sent a current through my body. All these years, I thought Agatha's insistence on legal documentation was her natural business acumen. Now I saw it was armor she was forging for me, piece by piece. "Mom?" Everest appeared in the doorway, still in hospital scrubs despite having finished his shift hours ago. His face bore the focused intensity he carried from the operating room. The hospital administrator forwarded me an email. He held up his phone. "Tyler Quinn contacted them about a family reconciliation story they want to pitch to Seattle Life magazine." My stomach dropped. Tyler, a name I hadn't spoken aloud in 28 years, Everest's biological father, who vanished before his son took his first breath. "They're coordinating," I said, the pieces clicking together with terrible clarity. This wasn't a chance encounter at the hospital. "They've been watching your career." Everest nodded, jaw tightening as he scanned the documents spread across Nolan's desk. I gathered the reports, feeling something unfamiliar crystallize inside me. Not fear. Something harder, clearer. In my hand, I held proof that my parents' sudden appearance wasn't about reconciliation or regret. It was calculated. As calculated as the night they drove me to the bus station with my life in a duffel bag. "I want to meet them," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. Nolan and Everest exchanged glances. "Are you certain that's wise?" Nolan asked. I tapped the folder. "I'm not walking in unarmed this time." 2 days later, the cafeteria of Cascadia Medical Center buzzed with the predictable rhythm of hospital life. Doctors grabbed coffee, visitors sought momentary respite, eating salads. It was public enough to prevent a scene, yet private enough for the conversation I needed to have. I'd chosen my outfit with the same strategic care Agatha would approve of, a tailored navy suit that carried the authority of the CEO I'd become, not the frightened teenager they'd discarded. Agatha's watch gleamed on my wrist. Its weight was reassuring. They arrived 5 minutes early, another calculated move. Martin's silver-streaked hair was freshly trimmed. His charcoal suit expensive, but understated. Jocelyn wore a cream-colored dress that softened her appearance, pearl earrings catching the fluorescent light. They looked exactly like what they were trying to portray, concerned grandparents seeking reconciliation. The image made my stomach churn. Caitlyn, Martin began, extending his hand. Arabella, I corrected him, not taking his hand. My legal name, for 28 years. His smile remained fixed, though something flickered in his eyes. Of course, old habits. I didn't invite them to sit. Instead, I placed Agatha's folder on the table between us. I found her files about you, I said, opening the folder to reveal the first surveillance photo from 1998. All the times you tried to contact us when it benefited you. Martin's face stiffened. Jocelyn's gaze darted around the cafeteria, clearly uncomfortable with potential witnesses. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private, she suggested, her voice honeyweed with concern. I prefer witnesses, I replied, turning another page. Like when you showed up at Bluefinch's grand opening in 2005. Or when you sent that letter to Everest's high school after his science award was in the paper. Martin shifted his weight, his confidence visibly faltering. Those were different times. We were trying to. Or when you hired that private investigator to research Agatha's finances in 2010, I continued, revealing another document. All violations of the no-contact order you signed. Jocelyn's composure cracked. Those were desperate times. We've changed. Everyone deserves a second chance. The irony of her using Agatha's phrase, the words that saved my life when they threw me away, ignited something fierce inside me. You signed away your rights for money, I said, sliding forward the court document with both their signatures. I have the records of the payment Tyler Quinn made to you, 8% of his potential inheritance from his family if you both disappeared from our lives. Martin's face reddened. That's exactly what happened, I interrupted, my voice carrying enough for nearby tables to hear. You calculated my value and found me wanting. Now you've calculated Everest's value and found him worth claiming. 6 doctors at a nearby table looked over, colleagues of Everest who had witnessed his meteoric rise through the surgical program. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to concern as they recognized me. We only want what's best for our grandson, Martin said, voice lowered but intensity unchanged. For our family. The word family in his mouth felt like a violation. I stood straighter, channeling every board meeting where I refused to be intimidated by men in expensive suits. You're not my family, I said clearly. You forfeited that right 29 years ago. Agatha Beaumont became my mother the night she found me sleeping on a park bench after you drove away. She's the name on my adoption papers. She's the name on my son's birth certificate. And she made sure you could never take that from us. Jocelyn reached toward me, her manicured fingers trembling slightly. Darling, we were wrong. We've lived with that mistake every day. Yet you never tried to make amends until my son became valuable to you, I countered, until the Agatha Beaumont Foundation was featured in the Times. A tall woman in a tailored suit approached our table, Dr. Lancaster, the hospital administrator. Her expression was politely concerned as she looked between us. Is everything all right, Mrs. Beaumont? She asked, emphasizing my chosen name. Before Martin could speak, I answered, yes, thank you. These people were just leaving. Something flashed across Martin's face, the same expression he wore the night he told me I had until morning to pack my things. But this time, I didn't flinch. This isn't over, he said quietly. Actually, it is, I replied. The adult adoption papers Agatha filed give me complete legal protection from any claim you might make. My attorney is preparing a cease and desist order as we speak. Dr. Lancaster's presence had drawn the attention of other staff members. Martin and Jocelyn recognized the shift in the room, the witnesses forming a silent wall of support around me. We'll be in touch, Martin said, attempting to salvage his dignity as they stood to leave. No, I said. Simply you won't. I watched them walk away, their carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of exposed truth. My hands weren't trembling anymore. For the first time since hearing them call my former name across the lobby, I felt steady. My phone buzzed with a text from Nolan. Judge Wilson approved the temporary restraining order. It's being served tomorrow. Before I could reply, another text arrived from Everest. Finished rounds early. Want me to come down? Dr. Lancaster placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Everest is one of our finest, she said. His character speaks volumes about his upbringing. Whatever those people wanted, they clearly don't deserve to be part of what you've built. The simple validation threatened to crack the composure I'd maintained throughout the confrontation. I managed a nod of appreciation. More hospital staff approached, doctors who had worked with Everest, nurses who had seen his dedication to patients. Each offered a quiet word of support or simply a knowing nod. The community I never expected rallied around me in the wake of my stand. When I finally sat alone at the table, my phone rang. Nolan sounded triumphant. "The adult adoption records are absolutely ironclad," he said without preamble. "I filed preemptive paperwork with family court. They won't get within legal shouting distance of either of you." "Thank you," I said. But my fingers had found something else in the folder, a handwritten note on Agatha's personal stationery. The sight of her elegant script made my throat tighten. "What is it?" Nolan asked, hearing my silence. "A letter from Agatha," I said softly, hidden in the legal files. I read the words that brought her voice back to me with startling clarity. "Blood makes relatives, but love makes family. Remember that when they inevitably return. You are my daughter in all the ways that matter, Arabella. Never doubt your right to the name you chose and the life you've built." By the time Everest found me, I'd composed myself again. He slid into the chair opposite mine, scanning my face for signs of distress. "Are you okay?" he asked. I closed the folder containing 3 decades of protection I never knew I had. "I am," I replied, surprised to find it was true. "Your grandmother made sure of that." Everest's smile held the same quiet strength Agatha's did. "Mom, you stood your ground just like grandmother taught you." As we walked together through the hospital corridors, I felt lighter than I had in days. This was only one battle in what promised to be a longer war, but now I knew I wasn't fighting with just my own strength. I was carrying Agatha's strategic foresight, Everest's unwavering support, and the legal ammunition Nolan had helped uncover. If I could achieve this much with only days of preparation, I wondered what might be possible with proper planning. For the first time since hearing my old name called across the lobby, I allowed myself to feel something beyond fear or anger. Hope. Nolan's conference room had transformed into our command center. Legal documents spread across the glossy oak table like battle plans. The morning sun filtered through Venetian blinds, casting striped shadows across our arsenal: court records, financial statements, newspaper clippings, and photographs. It had been a week since the hospital confrontation, and I'd exchanged raw emotion for something colder, more calculated. My finger traced the edge of a manila folder containing the no-contact order my parents had violated repeatedly over 29 years. "Their SEC investigation could be our strongest leverage," Nolan said, tapping a Business Journal article. His silver-rimmed glasses reflected the document's headline, "Gray and Fox Holdings Faces Federal Scrutiny." I nodded, mentally cataloging this vulnerability alongside others we'd identified. What legal challenges could they reasonably mount? I asked. 3 possibilities. Nolan slid forward a yellow legal pad. "They might claim Agatha exercised undue influence during your adult adoption. They could challenge the legitimacy of the name change. Or, most dangerously, attempt to establish some claim on Everest through biological connection." My stomach tightened at the last one. I twisted Agatha's watch, one full rotation, then another. "How do we counter the media narrative they're building?" I asked. "Controlled information release." Nolan adjusted his tie. "We have Agatha's documentation of their abandoned attempts to contact you whenever your achievements made the news. Each coincided with periods of financial difficulty for them." I picked up a faded newspaper clipping from 2008, my first bakery opening, tucked in the business section. The week after publication, Martin left 3 messages at Blue Finch. Agatha documented everything. She never made a move without planning 3 steps ahead. I ran my fingers across her familiar handwriting in the margins of a legal brief. I needed to think like she would. The conference room door opened, and Everest entered, still in his hospital scrubs. "They're making rounds at the hospital," he said without preamble. Dr. Winters mentioned that Martin asked pointed questions about my surgical fellowship application. I added this to our growing threat assessment. "Any contact with your colleagues?" They approached Dr. Matheson in the cafeteria. He shut them down immediately. Everest placed his phone on the table. I've documented everyone they've attempted to speak with. Nolan nodded approvingly. Perfect. Evidence of a continued pattern. I studied our collection of data points with the detached calculation I brought to quarterly business reviews. This wasn't personal anymore. It was a hostile takeover attempt to be neutralized. Emotion clouds judgment. Agatha taught me that. The Blue Finch managers reported the Greys came by the downtown location yesterday, I told them. Asking questions about our expansion plans, trying to get financial details from the assistant manager. Nolan made a note. We'll need statements from your staff. The afternoon passed in methodical preparation. We cataloged vulnerabilities, identified allies, anticipated counterattacks. My mind settled into the familiar rhythm of strategic planning, the same process that grew Agatha's single bakery into a regional chain. At 6, Nolan's assistant knocked and entered with a manila envelope. This just arrived via courier, Mr. Pierce. Nolan opened it, scanned the document, and his expression changed. Something tightened around my heart. What is it? I asked, already knowing it was nothing good. They filed a petition to invalidate your adult adoption. He passed me the document, based on Stevenson versus Linder, 2012. My fingers trembled slightly as I scanned the legal language. I've never heard of this case. If you have. Nolan removed his glasses. It's an obscure precedent from Montana involving questions of mental capacity in the adoptive parent. They're claiming Agatha wasn't competent when she adopted you. The words struck like physical blows. Not just attacking me, but Agatha's mind. Her judgment. The sharpest business intellect I'd ever known. They've hired Howard Levinson, Nolan said, tapping the signature on the filing. He specializes in challenging adult adoptions. The floor seemed to shift beneath me. They weren't just desperate, they were dangerously competent. Everest placed a steady hand on my shoulder. They're attacking the foundation of your identity. No, I corrected him, finding my voice. They're attacking Agatha's judgment. Her legacy. I straightened the documents on the table, aligning their edges with precision. My hands stopped trembling. The initial shock gave way to something harder, more focused. They think we're unprepared, I said. They don't realize Agatha anticipated this exact scenario. Nolan nodded, reaching for a sealed envelope from his safe. She left instructions for precisely this situation. I thought of Agatha on her deathbed 2 years ago, her hand clasping mine. Remember what I taught you about chess, Arabella? The best defense is prepared before the attack begins. My fingers closed around her antique watch, drawing strength from its steady rhythm. They're underestimating how thoroughly Agatha prepared us. I returned to the documents, my mind sharpening with newfound clarity. This wasn't just about protecting my identity anymore. It was about preserving everything Agatha built, everything she entrusted to me. The battle lines were drawn, the strategy set, and unlike that terrified 17-year-old girl abandoned at a bus station, I was not facing this fight alone. A week later, I was staring at my phone screen when the notification appeared. My thumb hovered over the local news app alert. Gray family seeks reconciliation with estranged daughter and grandson. Something inside me went still. Not the panicked stillness from the hospital lobby, but the deadly calm that comes before a storm. I tapped the notification. The video loaded, showing Martin and Jocelyn seated on a cream-colored couch in what appeared to be a hotel suite, the Olympic, just as they'd said. My father's silver hair was perfectly combed, his navy suit immaculate. My mother's blonde hair framed her face in soft waves, her pearl necklace catching the light as she dabbed at non-existent tears. "We simply want to know our grandson," Martin said, his voice carrying that practiced sincerity I remembered from childhood. After seeing his remarkable surgical achievement in the news, we realized life is too short to let old disagreements keep a family apart. Disagreements, I whispered to the empty room. Is that what we're calling abandonment now? The interviewer, a woman with sympathetic eyes and a predatory smile, leaned forward. And your daughter? What would you say to her if she's watching? Jocelyn touched her husband's arm, her diamond bracelet glinting. Caitlyn, sweetheart, we understand you might still harbor some resentment about the past. We were young parents facing an impossible situation. I laughed out loud, the sound harsh in my quiet living room. Young? You were 41, Dad. But family is family, Martin continued on screen. We're not getting any younger. All we want is to be part of your lives, to know our grandson. Is that so much to ask? The camera pulled back to reveal photos they'd brought, old snapshots of me as a child, carefully selected to create the illusion of a happy family. There was even a photograph of me at 16, taken the year before I got pregnant, before everything fell apart. My phone vibrated with Nolan's incoming call. Have you seen it? He asked without preamble. I'm watching now. My voice sounded strange even to my own ears, controlled, yet vibrating with something darker than anger. It's a calculated move, Nolan said. The timing is perfect, one day before the Foundation Gala. The Agatha Beaumont Foundation Gala, 500 guests, full media coverage, the most important fundraising event of the year for young mothers in crisis. The exact mothers I once was. They know exactly what they're doing, I said, watching as Jocelyn dabbed at her eyes again. The interviewer handed her a tissue, a practiced move that looked spontaneous. They're positioning themselves as reasonable people seeking reconciliation, Nolan continued, and you as. The bitter daughter keeping a beloved grandson from his grandparents. I finished for him, the unstable woman who changed her name and turned her back on family. As if summoned by my words, the interviewer asked that very question. Some might wonder why your daughter changed her name. Was there more to this estrangement than youthful disagreements? Martin's expression tightened for a fraction of a second before smoothing into practiced concern. Caitlyn was always sensitive, impulsive. We believe she fell under the influence of her employer, Agatha Beaumont, a wealthy woman who, unfortunately, had no children of her own. The implication hung in the air, ugly and calculated, that Agatha somehow manipulated a vulnerable girl, stole her from her loving parents. My grip tightened on the phone until my knuckles turned white. They weren't just coming for me now. They were attacking Agatha's memory. Call Everest, I told Nolan, my voice flat with controlled fury. Tell him not to watch this at the hospital. I'll meet him at your office in 30 minutes. I ended the call and forced myself to watch the rest. Each word they spoke was another brick in the wall of their narrative. Concerned grandparents. Heartbroken parents. A family torn apart by misunderstanding. Not once did they mention throwing me out with $219 to my name. Not once did they acknowledge the 29 years of silence, except to frame it as my choice, my bitterness, my inability to forgive. By the time I arrived at Nolan's office, my phone had 17 missed calls from reporters. 2 donors had texted to express concern about tomorrow's gala. The foundation's social media accounts were flooded with comments demanding I let bygones be bygones from people who knew nothing about what actually happened. Everest was already there, pacing the length of Nolan's conference room, his surgical precision temporarily abandoned in favor of raw fury. They called me their miracle grandson. He spat the words out, as if they had any right, as if they didn't sign away any claim to either of us decades ago. Nolan stood at the head of the table, calm amid our storm. We've prepared for this. Everything is in place. I took a deep breath, touching Agatha's watch on my wrist, one full rotation, then another. The ritual centered me, brought me back to what matters. Activate everything, I said. All of it. Now. Nolan nodded once, then picked up his phone. Within the hour, our counteroffensive began, not with angry denials or emotional outbursts, but with facts. Methodical, undeniable facts. A press release from Nolan's firm detailing the legal history, the court records, the temporary guardianship, the no-contact order, all carefully presented without attacking the Greys personally, simply laying out the documented timeline. A statement from Everest, professional and measured. I am proud to be Dr. Everest Beaumont, son of Arabella Beaumont. My chosen family has supported me through every step of my education and career. I respectfully request privacy as I continue my work, saving lives. Testimonials from long-term Bluefinch Bakery employees appeared on social media, stories about Arabella's leadership and Agatha's legacy. The community we'd built over decades began to rally, not with dramatic declarations, but with steady support. By evening, 3 major donors who had wavered called to confirm their attendance at tomorrow's gala. The news coverage shifted from family seeking reconciliation to complex legal history revealed. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt a strange hollowness as I watched our careful preparations unfold exactly as planned. For nearly 30 years, I'd carried the weight of that night, standing in the doorway with the pregnancy test, watching my life collapse, the long bus ride to nowhere. For 28 years, I'd been building something else, a business, a foundation, a life with my son. And now it came down to this. A public relations battle on the eve of the most important night of the year. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered, Arabella Beaumont. The foundation gala should be interesting tomorrow night. My father's voice, smooth as ever. We've decided to attend. The floor seemed to drop away beneath me. You weren't invited. We're community members interested in supporting young mothers, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. What kind of grandparents would we be if we didn't support such an important cause? I ended the call without another word, turning to find Everest and Nolan watching me with concern. They're coming to the gala, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. They've decided to crash it. Nolan's expression hardened. Then we'll be ready for them. Everest moved to my side, his hand on my shoulder. We've known this was coming, Mom. Everything is in place. I nodded. The hollowness inside me hardening into something stronger. We need to review everything one more time. No surprises tomorrow. We worked late into the night, reviewing security protocols, briefing staff, preparing for every possible scenario. The gala venue sent updated floor plans. The catering manager confirmed they'd been instructed not to seat the Greys at any foundation tables. Our legal team prepared documents to be served if necessary. It was after midnight when Everest and I finally returned home. We sat in the kitchen, Agatha's kitchen, with its hand-painted tiles and copper pots hanging from the ceiling rack. The heart of the home she created for us when no one else would. Remember what grandmother used to say about confrontations? Everest asked, his voice quiet in the stillness. I smiled despite everything. Never meet your opponent where they want to fight. Choose your own battlefield. Tomorrow, we fight on our terms. Everest reached across the table, took my hand. Tomorrow, we show them what real family looks like. I squeezed his hand, feeling the surgeon's calluses that mirrored my own baker's hands. Agatha would be proud of you. Of us, he corrected. She planned for this, Mom. She knew they might come back someday, and she made sure we'd be ready. I looked around this kitchen where Agatha taught me to bake, where I nursed Everest through childhood illnesses, where we celebrated his medical school acceptance. This home that belonged to us, not by birth, but by choice. Get some sleep, I told him. Tomorrow will be the performance of our lives. After he went upstairs, I sat alone in the quiet kitchen, touching Agatha's watch. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, I finally face the ghost of Caitlyn Gray and put her to rest forever. Tomorrow, we end this. The next evening, I stood at the back entrance of the Grand Ballroom, watching 500 of Seattle's most influential citizens mingle beneath crystal chandeliers. The Agatha Beaumont Foundation Gala had always been the culmination of our year's work, but tonight it represented something far more personal. My fingers found Agatha's watch. Its steady ticking was a metronome for my racing heart. Ready? Everest appeared beside me, handsome in his tailored tuxedo. The surgical precision in his hands now applied to straightening his bow tie. They're here, Nolan murmured, approaching from the lobby. Front entrance. Making quite the entrance for the cameras. I nodded. Oddly calm. Just as we expected. For weeks of preparation for this moment. For weeks of gathering evidence, preparing statements, coordinating with the foundation board. What began as an ambush at the hospital had transformed into a battlefield of my choosing. Mrs. Beaumont, a photographer, called. Could we get a photo of you with your son before his speech? I smiled, genuine warmth spreading through me as Everest placed his arm around my shoulders. This is what Martin and Jocelyn could never understand. This bond forged through sleepless nights, diaper changes, and medical school applications. A relationship they discarded for $219 cash. The ballroom buzzed with anticipation as the event coordinator signaled the 5-minute warning for our program. I caught a flash of platinum blonde hair near the entrance, Jocelyn, working the room with practiced charm. Martin at her side, greeting potential investors. The calculated precision of their movements betrayed their true purpose. "I should go prepare," Everest said, squeezing my hand. "See you on the other side, Mom." I watched him walk toward the stage, shoulders straight, head high. Everything we'd built together, about to face its greatest test. The lights dimmed. A spotlight caught the podium as the foundation director welcomed everyone. I searched the crowd, finding Martin and Jocelyn positioned strategically near the front, exactly where the cameras would catch their reactions. "Tonight, we celebrate 25 years of the Agatha Beaumont Foundation," the director announced. "And now I'm honored to introduce Dr. Everest Beaumont, whose surgical innovations have saved 17 infants this year alone." Applause cascaded through the room as Everest took the stage, his confidence filling the space. I stood taller, pride swelling in my chest. "Thank you all for supporting my grandmother's vision," he began. "Agatha Beaumont taught me that family isn't defined by bloodlines or birth certificates." His eyes found mine across the room, and I saw the 17-year-old boy who once asked why he didn't have grandparents like his friends. "Family is presence, not pedigree," Everest continued. "It's who stands beside you when the world turns its back, who builds you up when others tear you down." I noticed Martin's posture stiffen, Jocelyn's smile falter momentarily. My mother taught me that lesson by example. Abandoned as a pregnant teenager, she rebuilt her life brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. The crowd grew utterly silent. "Tonight, before we continue, I'd like to share something my grandmother prepared before her passing, something she knew might be needed someday." The massive screen behind him flickered to life, and Agatha appeared, filmed in her library 3 years before her death. My breath caught at the sight of her, regal in her favorite blue armchair, silver hair swept up, eyes bright with determination. "If you're watching this," she began, her voice strong despite her age, "it means Caitlyn's biological parents have resurfaced now that I'm gone." A murmur rippled through the crowd. To the people who gave her 10 minutes to vanish from their lives, Agatha continued, leaning forward, "I give you 10 minutes to vanish from hers. The young woman you abandoned became Arabella Beaumont, my daughter in every way that matters. She built a life you have no right to claim." My vision blurred with tears as Agatha's face grew solemn. "I've prepared for this moment. Every document, every legal protection, every contingency. You'll find no weakness in the fortress I've built around my family." The screen shifted to display court documents, the no-contact order, the name change petition, the adult adoption papers. My life from 1996 to the present day was presented in this video. Each part appeared with highlighted sections as Nolan stepped forward. "For the record," Nolan announced, his voice carrying across the stunned room. "These documents establish the legal separation between Arabella Beaumont and her former identity. The adult adoption was finalized in 2000, severing all parental rights." I watched Martin's face darken as he realized what was happening. This wasn't the simple reconciliation narrative they'd planned to spin for the cameras. Additionally, Nolan continued, pressing a button on his remote. "We have evidence of recent communications that reveal the true motivation behind this sudden reappearance." The speakers crackled with an audio recording, Tyler Quinn's voice unmistakable despite the years. 8% success fee is fair," he said. "I know how to approach them. Once we establish the family connection and get some press coverage, the foundation will be wide open." Gasps ripped through the audience. A prominent hospital board member turned to stare openly at Martin and Jocelyn, his expression hardening. "Caitlyn," Martin called out, voice steady despite the sweat now visible on his forehead. "This is outrageous. We're your family." The room fell silent. Every eye turned toward me. 29 years of preparation for this moment. Agatha's lessons about standing tall when you're broken inside. Everest's hand finding mine as I stepped forward. I walked slowly to the microphone, feeling the weight of 500 gazes. The cameras pivoted, recording every step. "That name died the night you left me on the street," I said, my voice clear and strong. I am Arabella, Agatha's daughter, Everest's mother. The truth of it resonated through me, solid as the foundation beneath my feet. You cast me out with $219. Now you want to claim what others built, what I built. Jocelyn stepped forward, desperation breaking through her composure. We were wrong. We made a terrible mistake. Yes, I interrupted. You did. And tonight, that mistake finally catches up to you. I nodded toward the back of the room where a court officer stepped forward, papers in hand. Martin and Jocelyn Gray, she announced clearly, I'm serving you with a temporary restraining order prohibiting contact with Arabella Beaumont, Dr. Everest Beaumont, or any employee of the Agatha Beaumont Foundation or Bluefinch Bakery Enterprises. The cameras flashed frantically as the officer approached them. Martin's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly, the first genuine reaction I'd seen from him since they reappeared in my life. His calculated facade crumbled for just a moment before he regained control, taking the papers with a trembling hand. This is a misunderstanding, he began, but his voice lacked conviction. The foundation director stepped forward. I believe it would be best if you left now, Mr. and Mrs. Gray. Two security guards materialized beside them. Not forceful, but unmistakably present. The room watched in hushed fascination as Martin straightened his tie one last time, a lifetime of maintaining appearances, even in defeat. This isn't over, he murmured, but the threat sounded hollow, even to my ears. As they were escorted toward the exit, something shifted in the atmosphere. One person began to applaud, then another, until the entire ballroom erupted. I stood stunned as the ovation washed over me. Years of silent validation finally given voice. Everest returned to my side, his arms solid around my shoulders. She's watching, he whispered, eyes bright with tears. I know grandmother is watching over you. Nolan approached, satisfaction evident in his measured smile. 29 years of documentation just paid off. The foundation director returned to the microphone, restoring order to the room. Mrs. Beaumont, would you care to address our guests? I stepped forward, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The restraining order didn't just protect me from them, it freed me from the specter of their return that had haunted me since Agatha's death. Tonight marks not just a continuation of Agatha's legacy, I began, but an expansion. I'm pleased to announce the Agatha Beaumont Fellowship for Young Mothers will double its capacity next year. The applause resumed, even louder than before. Everyone deserves a second chance, I continued, the words rising from the deepest part of me. Everyone deserves the opportunity to become who they're truly meant to be. As I looked out across the sea of faces, supporters, not judges, I finally understood what Agatha tried to tell me all those years ago. She hadn't just given me shelter, she'd given me the blueprint for building my own fortress, brick by brick, relationship by relationship. The Greys couldn't tear it down because they never understood what made it strong. Not money or social position, but the unshakable foundation of chosen family. Behind me, the screen displayed the foundation's new expansion plans, 18 rooms for young mothers and their children, on-site childcare, educational opportunities. A legacy built from the ashes of abandonment to new beginnings. To new beginnings, I said, raising a glass. 500 voices echoed, to new beginnings. The name they erased no longer mattered. The name I chose, the life I built, it stood unshaken. 6 months after the gala, I stood at the window of my office, overlooking Seattle's downtown skyline. The morning sun caught on the brass plaque beside my door, Arabella Beaumont, CEO. No hesitation followed when I read it now. No phantom echo of Caitlyn whispered in my mind. The Seattle Times business section lay open on my desk. Gray and Fox Holdings stock continues downward spiral, 28% loss since Beaumont Foundation Gala. I didn't feel the vengeful satisfaction I once imagined. Instead, a calm certainty washed over me. Justice doesn't always arrive with thunderclaps. Sometimes it comes in quarterly reports and SEC investigations. My phone buzzed with a text from Everest. Associate Chief Resident announcement just posted. Dinner tonight to celebrate? I smiled, typing back. Absolutely. Bring that Cabernet we've been saving. The transformation these past months startled me sometimes. I slept through the night now, no longer jolting awake at 3 a.m., wondering if Martin and Jocelyn might appear unannounced. Decisions came easier without the second-guessing that once plagued me. The board approved our expansion plans for Blue Finch Bakery. Our fourth location breaks ground next month. Nolan knocked once before entering, legal folders tucked under his arm. Since agreeing to become the Foundation's permanent legal counsel, he'd traded his formal suits for smart casual wear, the change reflecting our deepened trust. Tyler Quinn's bankruptcy fraud investigation is proceeding, he said, settling into the chair across from me. The prosecutor found the contract promising him that 8% success fee for orchestrating your reunion. They're calling it evidence of financial conspiracy. And my parents? The word no longer burned my throat. Maintaining a strategic distance. The restraining order ensures they can't approach you, Everest, or any Foundation property. I nodded, remembering how the gala audience gasped when the security team escorted them out. The community chose sides that night, and the Foundation donations increased 60% in the weeks that followed. I almost lost everything Agatha built for us, I said, touching her watch on my wrist. But you didn't, Nolan reminded me. You protected it, just as she protected you. The morning staff meeting flowed with an ease unimaginable 6 months ago. I laughed genuinely when our marketing director suggested Blue Finch cookies as holiday gifts. The tension that once lived between my shoulder blades had dissolved, replaced by a steady confidence. The Beaumont house renovations are complete, I told the team. All 18 rooms ready for occupancy. Our first 6 young mothers move in next month. Heads nodded around the table. This extension of Agatha's vision, creating temporary housing for young single mothers while they complete education or job training, felt right. The perfect evolution of her legacy. After the meeting, I drove to Seattle General for the hospital board lunch. The same building where Martin and Jocelyn ambushed me now felt like friendly territory. Nurses greeted me by name, Arabella, always Arabella, as I passed through corridors toward the administrative wing. The chief of surgery shook my hand warmly. Your son's surgical residents worship him, Mrs. Beaumont. That cardiac procedure he pioneered is being taught in 3 other teaching hospitals now. He gets his dedication from his grandmother, I replied, no longer feeling the need to justify our family connections. Later that afternoon, I walked through downtown past the park where I once slept on a bench at 17, pregnant and abandoned. The memories had lost their poison. They were just part of my history now, not wounds that reopened with each remembering. I noticed her immediately, a young woman sitting on that same bench, a sleeping infant bundled against her chest, a small backpack beside her. Tears tracked silently down her face as she stared at nothing. Excuse me, I said, sitting beside her. Are you all right? She startled, wiping her cheeks quickly. I'm fine. The defensive tone was one I recognized, having used it myself decades ago. I was right where you were once, I told her, nodding to the sleeping baby. 17, pregnant, nowhere to go. Her eyes widened slightly, suspicion battling with desperate hope. Everyone deserves a second chance to become who they're meant to be, I continued, hearing Agatha's words flow through me. The Agatha Beaumont Foundation has a residence program, 18 rooms, on-site childcare while you finish school or job training. I don't have money for rent, she said, chin lifting slightly. The foundation covers it. I reached into my purse for my business card. 3 families are already housed through our support program. 15 scholarships available annually. She took the card, reading Arabella Beaumont, CEO, with trembling fingers. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Because 29 years ago, someone helped me when I sat right here, I answered. She told me my name didn't have to define my future. That evening, Everest, Nolan, and I sat around Agatha's dining table, wine glasses reflecting candlelight. The house felt warm with memories, not just of Agatha, but of the life we'd built in her absence. To Associate Chief Resident, Nolan raised his glass toward Everest. And to Blue Finch Bakery's expansion, Everest countered. To family, I said simply, the one we choose, the one that stays. Later, after they'd gone to bed, I stood in Agatha's study, running my fingers over the spines of her books. The moonlight caught on a framed photo, 17-year-old me holding newborn Everest, Agatha's arm around my shoulders. When I changed my name, I whispered to her memory, I didn't just change what people called me. I claimed who I truly was meant to be. Outside, the city lights twinkled like promises. The Beaumont Foundation scholarship applications for next year's program sat on my desk. 15 opportunities for young women to rename their futures. Tomorrow I'll review them, continuing what Agatha started. But tonight, I simply stand in the quiet house, feeling the weight of both names. Caitlyn Gray, the abandoned girl I once was. And Arabella Beaumont, the woman I became. Both are part of me now. Neither defines me completely. I am who I choose to be. And that finally is enough.